Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video I will be giving my opinions on some of the most popular and best players to be buying ahead of Gameweek 24. Welcome back everyone to another video. Now if you did enjoy today's video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here as well, both of which are completely free to do of course. Let's start off by talking about the Chelsea players. Of course, a lot of us have had this exact game week marked in our calendars for a good hopping on point for Chelsea, given the fixtures down the right-hand side of the screen here read West Ham at home, Wolves away, Leeds at home, Burnley at home. Now, each of those clubs in isolation might not be the very best fixture you can imagine. West Ham have been in better form recently, 1-2 on the bounce now. Wolves away as well. They've been looking a little bit more resurgent in recent weeks. Leeds at home won't be easy. Burnley at home, okay, probably the easiest of the bunch in fairness. But as a grouping of fixtures, you can't really ask for much better. All four of those, three of them at home, are all good fixtures. So Chelsea players are going to be interesting. I think the challenge will be picking the correct Chelsea players that are actually going to play the majority of the minutes in all four of those game weeks. And honestly, there might not be any Chelsea players, maybe barring Sanchez in goal, that you can guarantee will play all four of these. So it won't be easy, but I'm going to do my best to advise in the best way possible. Let's start off with Cole Palmer very quickly. Was, well, rested, missed out, whatever you want to call it, from the Crystal Palace game. Wasn't quite ready. And I think that's the first indication of how little we might be able to trust Cole Palmer over this next run. I think logically what they probably have done is rested him for a very important Napoli game in the Champions League. They need to win that for a chance of coming in the top 8 in the Champions League. That would save them from having to play in the playoff round and 2 extra fixtures in the calendar, which I'm sure they're going to want to avoid having to play. But Napoli is a very important game. If they've rested him for that, fantastic. It's only a few days turnaround after that to the West Ham game. So can you guarantee he's going to play West Ham? Absolutely not. Can you even guarantee he's going to get through Napoli unscathed? Again, probably not. And then even if he does play West Ham, after that, you've got Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-final a couple of days later before they go into Wolves away from home. And Chelsea are not going to throw that game. They're going to go full strength. Cole Palmer is probably being lined up for the Napoli game and the Arsenal game. Whether or not he can play West Ham in between is up for debate. And then Wolves after that is going to be difficult as well for him. And we've seen over the last few weeks, when it's a tight turnaround between fixtures, Cole Palmer is really struggling. So honestly, I can understand why some people are attacking the upside there. Obviously, we know that he's a great player, but I haven't seen him anywhere near his best in quite a while now. He's playing through an injury by the looks of it, and the medical staff are going to be very, very cautious with his minutes and only playing him in the matches where they absolutely need him until he's back to full fitness, of course. So I think he'll play Napoli. I think he'll play Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-final, and therefore I honestly can't guarantee he's even going to play West Ham or Wolves. Wolves and Leeds are like a 2-3 day turnaround between each other, so he'll probably play one of the two of those, but you can't guarantee both. And if Chelsea don't beat Napoli, or even if they do, they might still not make it into the top 8 in the Champions League, and they might have that playoff round, the home away ties. I think the first one is after game week 26, so that's going to be a tight turnaround after, I think it's the Leeds game, to a big playoff game where, again, it's winner takes all. You've got to win that game. So Cole Palmer probably will be used in that game over the Leeds game, for instance, as well. So managing his minutes is going to be really important for Chelsea. I don't think you can guarantee he's going to play in the Premier League. I don't think it's worth the money personally. So that brings me across to Enzo Fernandez, who I think will be positively impacted by the fact that Cole Palmer's minutes might be reduced a little bit in the Premier League. We've already seen he's on penalties when Palmer's not on the pitch. So that's great. That's a big tick in his box. 0.61 XGI per 90 is fantastic. And of course, if Cole Palmer's not on the pitch, it's one less player that can play in that number 10 role through the centre, and Enzo thrives there. We've already seen in the new system, they're playing the kind of double pivot of Caicedo with Andre Santos in behind the number 10. Enzo's not going to be needed there as often. So if he's playing more advanced, if he's playing more minutes through this period than Cole Palmer is, and with that sort of data, I think he is a better pickup than Palmer is for much, much cheaper. Can I guarantee he's going to play all 4 of these? No, because as I've already mentioned, although it's going to be more of a problem for Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez is still going to need a rest at some point, you would think, or reduce minutes at some point, so he can get through all of these really important games. So I can't guarantee he's going to play all of them or all of the minutes in all of them, but I'm pretty confident his minutes are going to be better than Cole Palmer's, and for cheaper, and with actually better data as well at the moment. João Pedro is getting a lot of attention at the moment, all of a sudden on social media. A few people have been asking me about him. I'm not a million miles away from saying it's worth a risk because he's at a decent price. The data's not terrible. But if you just take a quick look back at his minutes over the Christmas period, I think that will give you an indication to how much you can trust him as a ongoing pick in FPL with these 4 fixtures. I'm not going to go over the congestion again because that'll be the 3rd time in this section alone. But for the same reasons as Cole Palmer, same reasons as Enzo, but even more so, I think João Pedro is going to be a player whose minutes are managed, that you're not going to be able to guarantee 4 starts in there, probably not even guaranteeing 3 starts in there. They've got Delap that can play up front. If João Pedro was to move back into the number 10, he's competing with Enzo, with Palmer, with 1 or 2 others as well. I just can't see a world in which he gets consistently 80 plus minutes a match. I don't hate going there, but I'm personally not convinced enough to go there. He's a non-penalty taking striker with okay data and not great minutes, in my view. If you want to go there and take a punt on the fixtures, absolutely. He's obviously done really well in the previous 2 game weeks where he's actually got decent minutes. I just don't know whether that will continue going into this patch. Finally, Chalobah. Probably the safest outfield pick of the lot. I talk about him so often recently because, again, the fixtures have been on the horizon. So I promise I'll stop soon. But I think now's the time to be buying him if you haven't done so already. And if you were interested in a Chelsea defender whatsoever. Their data's all right. It's not crazy good, but the fixtures are good enough where I could see a couple of clean sheets in there. Chalobah's decent on the DEFCON, not bad underlying attacking data, and he is known to get the odd goal as well. So I think he's a good pick. Can I guarantee he's going to play all 4 of these? No, but I can't guarantee that with any of the Chelsea outfielders. But I think he's probably the most likely of all of them to get the most minutes. With all of that in mind, with the clean sheet odds and with the defensive data, as well as a sprinkling of attacking data, I think if you're going with a Chelsea pick, Chalobah is probably the safest. But if you want something a bit more exciting, and if you're in the market for a midfielder or an attacker generally, I don't mind Enzo whatsoever. And for me personally, I'm deciding between 2 routes this week. One involves buying Chalobah, the other one buys Enzo. And I'm happy with either of them. I think both of them are a good pickup this week. Wow, I just realised I spent 8 minutes talking about Chelsea players there. So I'm going to try and be much more succinct for the next section. I do apologise. Hopefully it was worth it. Let's talk about Man United quickly. Fernandes and Mbeumo are big, heavily bought players this week yet again. No surprises. Even ahead of Arsenal, they were getting bought. Now especially, they're coming into a good run of fixtures. Fernandes, I don't think we really need to talk about him all that much because everyone else will be doing the talking for me. Data's fantastic. He's on penalties, 90 minutes, good fixtures, decent on the DEFCON as well, playing in a more advanced role. Big tick, done. Fernandes, buy him. Unless you, for whatever reason, just don't fancy him, obviously feel free to use your own free will and judgment on that. But I think he is one of the best picks in the game. Even at 9.4 million, I wouldn't overthink it. I would personally be having him, and I've already got him myself. The question for me is whether or not you want to then double up on the Man United attack. And Mbeumo has looked really good recently, obviously scored against Arsenal as well, a very well taken opportunistic goal, but we know he's got that in his locker. And like I said, the fixtures are good. Slightly cheaper price, not quite as good on the underlying data, but he's projected to do really well on the underlying data because he's playing in a more advanced role now all of a sudden under Carrick. So Solio, my data partner, I suppose you call them, not sponsored, I just like using them, have him as a projected 0.68 XGI per 90 over the next 5 game weeks. That's really, really good, especially for the price. I think the question mark with Mbeumo would be a kind of twofold. Number one, will he continue to play in the same role he has done in the previous 2 game weeks against Man City and Arsenal? Or was that because of the opponent they were playing? Were they playing him in that way in that system because they were going to pounce quickly on the counter and they wanted Mbeumo with the pace in behind. Is that going to continue, or is he going to get shifted across a little bit into a more traditional winger role than he was playing through the centre more often than not in those recent 2 games? That could happen. I don't think that makes him a bad pick by any means, but then he's directly competing with someone like Ahmad, or Cunha as well, as we've seen, can sub on if he's not already in the starting 11 anyway, or potentially even Dorgu if he's not in the starting 11. And we've already seen in the previous 2 weeks, he has been brought off early, which is something that we haven't come to expect from Mbeumo in recent seasons at Brentford or even this season at Man United. But Carrick isn't shy when it comes to bringing off big name players slightly early or benching them. We've seen, I think in his previous stint as interim manager, he even benched Bruno once or twice. So it does happen. I wouldn't let that scare you off of Mbeumo because the data's great. I think the minutes will still be good, but I wouldn't ever be shocked if he got brought off around the 70th, 75th minute if the game is already wrapped up or if they need fresh legs for whatever reason. I think he'll continue to start. And a lot of people have said, well, he was only really brought off because they just scored the goal and they were protecting a lead or whatever. And that is absolutely fine. That might be the case. But what's to say that that can't then be the case in a future game week as well? Let's say they go 2-0 up against Fulham. Maybe for whatever reason he hasn't scored the goal, but he gets brought off in the 65th, 70th minute because they're protecting the lead and they're bringing him off to conserve him for the next fixture. Who knows? Because we've seen it once, it could happen again. The other thing to note is, as weird as it is to say, and I kind of note myself sounding weird when saying this, but Man United going up against Man City and Arsenal were kind of free hits in a way for them. And they did benefit from having Mbeumo on the counter-attacks, those fast breakaways. That does suit him. Against Fulham, against Spurs, against West Ham, against Everton, they're going to have more of the ball. They're going to have a more possession-oriented style of football because the opposition aren't going to attack them with the same ferocity as a Man City or an Arsenal will. And I wonder how often Man United are going to be able to exploit them on the counter and get in behind them, therefore benefiting Mbeumo quite as often. So again, not saying he's a bad buy. I'm very interested in him myself, but I'm also quite interested to see how Man United set up in a game that you'd expect them to win, where they might have a bit more of the ball, and whether or not Mbeumo is playing the same role and whether or not he gets in behind as often as he did in the previous 2 game weeks. Again, still very hot on him. I think he'll be a great pick for the next few game weeks. Bruno Fernandes is no one's essential, but he's as near essential as I would care to admit. Mbeumo is in the pack with someone like a Rodgers, a Semenyo, for me anyway, and an Enzo Fernandez maybe, where good picks, but you can only pick a few of them. And he's in that bucket of players for me. So a good buy, but not an essential one. Okay, so let's talk about another defender that I think hasn't quite picked up the traction I was expecting this game week. Daniel Munoz came back from injury, played against Chelsea, looked good in spots, but of course was maybe forgotten about a little bit because they lost the game quite heavily. It wasn't the best performance from Crystal Palace, although they did put up a decent amount of XG. And now Munoz is back. That is another route of attack where Crystal Palace are going to look to exploit other teams. The other thing to note with Crystal Palace is they've got some good fixtures coming. Now maybe the next 2 aren't brilliant, but Nottingham Forest haven't been amazing recently. Brighton away is obviously a big rivalry for Crystal Palace. They'll be bang up for that. But afterwards, game week 26 and 27, I've noted it on a few of my different videos over the last few game weeks. Burnley at home, Wolves at home. I think we're going to be really, really interested in having at least 1, maybe 2 Crystal Palace players by then for those 2 fixtures. I think the reason he's not been popular is because honestly Palace are all at sea at the moment. They're losing players, they're going to lose their manager. There's not a lot of confidence in them as a team, and therefore as an FPL pickup you can't really guarantee any of their players are going to do all that much. I do understand that, and I actually largely agree, and I would be maybe hesitant to pick up a Palace player right now 2 weeks before the really good fixtures. But I, at the very least, think it's a good time to maybe keep an eye on how Munoz is playing, make sure the minutes are ticking upwards as well, as he's been off for quite a while with an injury, see how the attacking data is running along, and whether or not there are early signs that he could be a good buy in game week 26. If you're on a wildcard this week, or if you're looking to differentiate yourself from the pack, Munoz is about as good as it gets because we know the upside is fantastic. He's a goal scorer. He plays almost right wing for Palace at times, a bit like Dorgu, but with more reliable minutes and with more of a track record of doing so. So Munoz, for me, could be the ultimate differential right now. We know the upside's there. We know he's explosive. And whilst Crystal Palace are leaky at the moment and they are conceding goals, Munoz has got so much attacking upside that I think it balances it out and it still makes him a really good pick. So I understand all of the hesitation, all of the reluctance around buying Palace players generally because they as a team don't look solid and set right now. But as long as Munoz stays at the club, as long as he keeps getting minutes, he's going to have the underlying attacking data to support him as a good pick. And for me, it's actually a pretty close call between him and Chalobah as that third defender in my team right now. I'm quite tempted to maybe differentiate myself and to hop onto Munoz early and take a punt that he does bag a couple of goals across the next 4 game weeks. Certainly by game week 26, I think a lot of us are going to be quite interested, especially in Munoz over Lacroix or Richards, because whilst the clean sheets haven't looked that secure, I still do back Munoz for attacking returns. Okay, so moving on to a player which has given me a lot of pause for thought. I'm finding this one quite tricky to cast judgment on either way as an FPL pick moving forward. But Antoine Semenyo has been amazing this season. He's obviously richly deserved his move to Man City. He's continued his goal scoring form early days at Man City. The data's not looking too bad, although he is overperforming it. But 11 goals, 5 assists already, 16 attacking returns in 23 game weeks. For that price, is very, very good value for money. And now he's in an even better attack where you'd imagine that those underlying data points are going to continue to tick upwards. So what's not to love, basically? He's at 48% ownership. I cannot believe it's that high, to be honest. I have been a bit thrown by that. I'm now very scared of him as a pick. And this is why I'm finding it quite hard to judge whether or not I am desperate to buy him and whether or not I should highly recommend him in these videos, because he is a very good FPL pick. I just do still have in the back of my mind some hesitations about recommending any Man City midfielder, to be honest, just because they've got so many options. Now, one thing in the pros column I will mention is at the moment, he cannot be registered for the Champions League. So he can't play in the midweek before game week 24. So he'll have a rest there. And you'd imagine he's going to be very set, very secure to start against Spurs on the weekend. Not an easy game necessarily. Man City haven't got a great track record against Spurs, but at the moment, given how Spurs are playing, that is a good fixture. I'd be happy enough playing him for that one. So in theory, short term, really good purchase. Even with Liverpool away after that, I wouldn't be massively scared of it. It's obviously an important game. They're going to want to win, as they will every week. And Semenyo, given the form he's in, I would still have him down as a really likely starter for that week. But I think the further you go into the season and the busier the fixture ticker looks for Man City, they're going to probably go quite deep in the Champions League. Who knows whether or not they'll have a playoff round, by the way, at the moment. They are, I think, just about in a secure spot to make the top 8, but they definitely need to win their Champions League game to secure that. And even then, I'm not completely certain it's guaranteed. After that, though, let's say they do make it through without needing the playoff, Semenyo, that then can be registered for the Champions League knockout rounds. So all of a sudden, we've gone from a period of the season where he's getting a midweek rest every week to a period where he might have to play in the midweeks all of a sudden. He's not all that used to doing that with Bournemouth. And Man City do have a lot of options. Marmoush has put his hand up now as a player that was a bit forgotten about early season, but all of a sudden he scored a goal, looked quite good against Wolves. He's going to get some minutes. Foden's obviously going to get minutes. Haaland's going to get minutes. Cherky, Reinders, Bernardo Silva, Doku, maybe even Savinho. I don't even know if he's injured at the moment, but at some point you'd imagine he's going to get minutes as well. There are just so many options there that I'm finding it really tough to confidently say on a video that Semenyo is nailed and he's going to continue to get 80, 90 minutes every single week. I personally would play him every week. He's been good enough. And if I was Pep Guardiola, which I'm clearly not, but if I was, I would play him every single week. But the amount of times I've said on this video almost that exact quote, and then 3 or 4 weeks in the future, something has changed. Just see Cherky earlier on in the season, Foden, Reinders as well, Doku earlier on in the season as well. Looked nailed, looked imperious, almost impossible to drop. 3 weeks forward, and all of a sudden they're not in the team. And Pep can be absolutely brutal with that. So right now he looks amazing. And I'm tempted to just say full steam ahead, recommend him highly. The ownership's really high. He's very scary to go against. But given the fixtures aren't amazing, and given what we know Pep can be like in future weeks, because we just cannot predict him off in the future 3 or 4 game weeks from now, I still just have that nagging doubt in the back of my head that at some point this is going to be an issue. But if you've got him, you're loving it. There are going to be braver managers than me out there who think that Semenyo will be nailed, and they will probably be right for the next few game weeks. There's just that 5%, 10% doubt in the back of my mind, which makes it hard for me to highly recommend him on a video. But if you're more bullish about him on his minutes than I am, or you're 99 to 100% convinced, then I say full steam ahead. Go for it, because the data's good. He's playing in an advanced, fairly central area at times, cutting inside, looking brilliant in a great attack. I just wonder if in 3 or 4 game weeks time, we're going to get pepped once again. Okay, so let's wrap up the video by talking about 2 strikers who have hit a nice patch of form recently, both reasonably priced as well. And both Bowen and Evanilson are being talked about as decent purchases over the next few game weeks. Going to start with Jarrod Bowen, and I'll say the line that I always say with Jarrod Bowen: he's never a bad pick, ever, because he always gets 90 minutes. The data, whilst not amazing, it will just tick along nicely throughout the season, and you can almost take it to the bank that he's going to finish this year with 20-ish attacking returns, because he does every single season. He'll be up around 180 to 190 points like he is every single season. And actually, recently, given the news around Paqueta, I think he's about to become a slightly better FPL pick than he was even before, because he's going to also now have penalties. I think he got a little bit fortunate scoring the penalty at the weekend because he slipped. I think his standing leg kind of slipped, and he was a little bit fortunate that it didn't completely give way and give him a double touch or maybe skew the shot slightly. But it went in. It was actually a very well-placed penalty. And he's undoubtedly going to keep penalties now with Paqueta going off to Brazil. I think terms have been agreed, but that it's not a signing that's actually been officially announced yet. But it looks quite likely that he's going to be on his way. Bowen would therefore become more talismanic on penalties. Maybe the team loses a bit of creativity, but so far, last couple of game weeks without Paqueta, they've looked much better. And although he does offer quite a lot creatively, it doesn't look like West Ham have suffered from that in any way. So actually, maybe West Ham are on the upturn. They're looking slightly better. They're making a fight of their battle for staying in the Premier League. Of course, that was poorly worded, but you get what I mean. And to be fair, after Chelsea away, it's not a bad run of fixtures. Burnley away is obviously very good, followed by Man United and Bournemouth, both at home. Both have been historically quite leaky defences. Bowen is not a bad buy. I just don't think he's ever a player that I'm going to be really excited to go out and get. It's more, he's the kind of player that if I'm looking around for a forward and it feels like the options are just not really doing it for me and I can't really figure out who is a good pick, Bowen's always a safe one. He's never going to be a bad pick, like I said. Now, let's move over to Evanilson, who has been a bit more up and down this season. He's at a cheaper price, 7 million, so a little bit more affordable than Bowen. The underlying attacking data is also better, 0.42. And if we look at the Solio projection for the next 5 game weeks, it's slightly better than Bowen's is as well. I think with Evanilson, the nice thing is that his minutes should be relatively secure. Earlier on in the season, you might have had him down as competing a little bit with Krupi, but now Krupi is playing alongside Evanilson, especially considering all of their other injury woes and obviously Semenyo leaving the club. They are kind of playing together more often, so you don't really have that natural substitution for Evanilson anymore. Obviously, there are other strikers that can come in, but Evanilson's played well recently. I think he scored 3 in his last 4 game weeks. He's starting to get back to the kind of form we saw at times last season. And I actually remember, if I cast my mind back to the start of this season, I was quite high on Evanilson as a pick for FPL. I thought he was at a decent price. The underlying data historically looked pretty good. And he had a good first season in the Premier League. It just hasn't really panned out for him in the first half of this season. But he looks confident. He's actually slotting away his chances, or the majority of his chances now. And the fixtures are really good. So there's a reason we all wanted, or not all of us, but quite a few people wanted Tavernier, for instance, for these fixtures. It's because they're really positive. It's obviously a shame to lose Tavernier, but Evan-Nilsson looks like a pretty good second option to have. The one thing I would note, and people are asking me, is do you expect him to take penalties? Maybe. I couldn't confidently say that. Krupi also looked like he might be putting his hand up for penalties recently. So I don't know. I could guarantee that. It's possible that he could take penalties, but I wouldn't take that to the bank, and I wouldn't rely on that as a reason to be getting him. I think get him if you want to, with everything I've mentioned here. Good fixtures, decent data, good price point. That's all great. And then if he happens to then also take a penalty, that's a nice little added bonus in his column. I'll wrap up the video by just saying we've talked about a few strikers today, Bowen, Evan-Nilsson, and we mentioned João Pedro near the start of the video. I would honestly say out of those three, João Pedro would be my least favourite to pick, because I just don't think I can guarantee the minutes over the next four. And yet I've had the most questions about João Pedro, and he seems to be the one that's being purchased by the most people. I would still prefer either Bowen or Evan-Nilsson, given I think I can rely on their minutes over the next few game weeks a little bit more. And actually, I think there are 2 or 3 Chelsea players I'd prefer over João Pedro. If he keeps playing 90 minutes or 85 plus a match, and it looks like his minutes are very secure, then he starts to rise above these two. But until that happens, I'm just not there yet. So again, might be my own internal biases creeping in there against João Pedro, because I just don't historically feel like he's been that much of a good pick this season, with the minutes being very insecure. But that could change. I personally would have Evan-Nilsson or Bowen ahead of them. Actually, right now, I think I'd pick Evan-Nilsson as the top one, but Bowen, like I said, just never, ever a bad pick. You can take points to the bank with him over a decent stretch of games. It will be up and down, but over a 10-game week period, I'd be very surprised if you didn't get 4 or 5 attacking returns out of him. Let's put it that way. Anyway, we'll finish the video there. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it. Hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. And leave a comment below if there are any other players that I haven't talked about that you'd like me to give my opinions on.